What, now?
Yeah, we're on.
I'm going to do it every time. Arr. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Vice Press Open Channel, episode 22, possibly. I'm Florey, one of your hosts. In the middle, we've got James Henshaw of Vice Press.
Howdy.
And we've got the mighty Matt Ferguson over there in his TDK hat.
I'm here.
Say hello. All right. Today, I'm rubbish. So these two are going to do most of the talking. I'm just going to sit here and go, bit of that.
We're off to a high energy start. I can feel already. I don't know why I'm holding my boobs.
Yeah. We'll get it busting. We'll get going. Have
Get
you
it
took some?
busting.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I guess
I've got some
booze.
I got some drugs in this cup. So the more I drink of this, the more pep I'll have.
Do it.
I guess we're following the pace of the thing that we're talking about today.
You piece of shit. It's true. No, it is true. You're not wrong. It's very slow. But that's
So
the point.
today we are talking about the Star Trek, the motion picture, the director's cut. If we possibly watched that one, or some of us didn't, we don't really know what we've watched. But that, in essence, Star Trek, the motion picture. Because the big fella over there has made his poster, probably the greatest poster that's ever been made, according to the internet so far. And we want to chat about the film.
Yeah. With the poster, I'll just say that's what I wanted to make. Yeah, talk about the film. No, we'll talk about the poster.
Let's talk about the first.
That's the art I wanted to make for when they re-released it with the new 4K one. And I did all in my power to make that happen, and I spoke to producers, I spoke to the studio, I was like, I'll do it. And then it didn't happen. But that happens sometimes when you tell people you want something, they go, no. If I'd have been cool and not said anything, they probably would have hired me or something. I don't know. But anyway, I got to do it in the end, and I got to do it for myself with no art directors, and I think it ended up pretty good. That's that, and that's why we decided to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Would I be right in saying that this is Vice Press's the debut of your newly acquired Star Trek license? Would I be right in saying that?
You would be right in saying that. Yeah, we've been trying to get the Star Trek license for a while because obviously Matt's a super fan, and I do like Star Trek. I just
look.
But there we are. Taps on his tits.
Oh no, we're gonna get kicked off YouTube now for all this pornography.
No, there was no nip. There was no nip. It only does it if there's nip.
Oh, is that how it
God.
works?
I think so. Yeah, because nips are
If
the
you show your
offending
dong,
article.
though, just pants off.
We're going to be demonetized
I've
before we're even
got any
monetized.
insignia on my dong, so it's all good.
Oh, thank goodness.
Said phases to
horrifying.
Yeah, this is the start in a Star Trek series. We've been wanting to get the license for a while because obviously Matt's a huge fan, and we chatted to Paramount and we finally kind of got that. We have had the license for a good 6 months, and we've been working on creating a pipeline of artwork before we launched it, rather than kind of launching it, which is a bit of a gamble because obviously if it flops, we've got all that stuff to do, but it won't. We're gonna do a bit
We're
of
on
a
the
mix.
air, James. Don't say these things.
Yeah.
The thing is there's pent up demand for decent Star Trek posters, I think so.
And I think something that shows when we've done things like this in the past, when we do a series of posters like with the 2000 AD stuff, because we know it and we know it quite well, there's a reverence for it. We kind of it really taps into the collector fan base as well. By the time this goes out, Matt's poster will have gone on sale. It may or may not be sold out, but we've got plans over the next few months. We're going to be doing remastered versions of original posters by folks such as Bob Peake. So we've been working with Thomas Peake, Bob's son, to get some of the original files there. Matt can talk about that a bit more a bit later. But then also, other artists that may or may not be on this call. We've done work with it as well. Florey's done one, which is what we was alluding to last week about the greatest poster ever made. Florey's done Relevant Khan.
Right? Let's just wait. Eh?
I chose the good film
which is stunning.
Yeah. Wait, you know what though? it's got that reputation, the Star Trek the motion picture, and it's actually a load of old bullshit. It's that whole thing with the odd ones are crap. It's nonsense. It's not true.
No,
True.
I was joking.
What we should do?
Oh no, you were joking because it is a slow-paced movie, but that's just old-fashioned. That's what movies used to be like.
I think what's happened with it is because I've been doing a Star Trek rewatch. I'm up to Star Trek 5 now, where they just get batshit mental, and I'm coming back to 1, and I'm like, ooh, it's a bit of a jar in pace in terms of how it is.
Yeah. Well, it's in it. I think what happened as well at the time, it came out in the wake of Star Wars, and the reason why it got green light as a movie was because of the success of Star Wars, and they were, what else have we got in space? And they went Star Trek. And then Gene Roddenberry was like, no, I'm making 2001.
Yeah.
And so people were expecting action, fight, which is what they get with Wrath of Khan. But it's actually a much more slow, meditative, old school sci-fi.
In a vacuum, like taken as for what it is, whether you and for your mileage may vary depending on what Star Trek you've seen. I think it is a good movie. It's just obviously they didn't finish it. Like there's that whole thing that it was just rushed out the door and all that sort of shit.
It was it was like the assembly, wasn't it? The theatrical cut wasn't really actually a theatrical cut. They didn't have time to test it, to edit it down. There was like unfinished effects shots. There was all sorts of crazy stuff because it was like right to the wire. Like it was the day it came out that it was ready to go.
Right. So I think what we should do before we get too far into this is just for the listener. Let's go through with our background with Star Wars. And fucking hell, I just pissed off half the internet with Star Trek.
You're just like my mum. That's what my mum does. Do you like this Star Wars?
Okay, hold that in.
To be fair, she doesn't. She's a massive Trekkie, but
Yeah, background with Star Trek, like just the overall, and then what version of this particular the motion picture did you watch this week? Because we've all watched it just this week just so we could do this podcast. Mm-hmm. Matthew wants to go first. Everyone knows.
Yeah, you go,
Matthew.
Right, okay. Well, I am the massive Trekkie. So I started off with this when I was a little kid because my parents are Star Trek fans. So I watched this probably when I was about 7 or 8, along with films like 2001, Forbidden Planet, Star Wars, obviously. And so I had it silent running. It all kind of like got melted into my brain at an early age. And this one always stuck out for me because the thing with science fiction films, they a lot of them, Star Wars, for example, is a clear example of that. It's like a war, it's a bad thing happening. You don't want to be there. You don't want to live on Tatooine, do you?
No.
It's horrible.
I hate sand. It's irritating and gets everywhere.
It's a dirty, grubby place. Alien, same. But Star Trek is the one where they went, actually, it's our future and it's somewhere where, it's a positive future where humanity's kind of like sorted itself out. And you want to live there. Like, you want to be on that spaceship. It's especially like in the Next Generation. It's like, I would have quarters there. I would live on that spaceship and work with those people. And that's kind of like what sets Star Trek apart for me from those adventure movies is that it's a clear future that you could inhabit. And I just love that about it. I just love it. And the movie.
So you're the old school Trekkie, yeah? That's basically you. Sorry.
I'm old school Trekkie, yeah. But I like
you're all over
Lower Decks is mint. Yeah, Lower Decks.
What I mean is that you're all over. Yeah, you know all the shit.
I've watched it all. I've watched Voyager. All 7 seasons of Voyager. I've done it. Oof. I've watched Enterprise. I've watched all 4 seasons of Enterprise. I've done it. You don't have to watch them that often.
Completely
that often. Or at all.
But they're like the good. When it's good, it's the best thing ever. I think it's like just amazing. And the movies are just a real prime example of like just good science fiction. I think even Star Trek.
What about you, Jimbo?
Get bent, everybody.
Star Trek 5.
Me. So my dad's dad, my granddad, I guess you would call that, was a huge fan of Star Trek. And so 1992, my sister was born, so I'd have been 6 years old. We were stopping at my granddad's house while my dad and stepmom were in the hospital. And we just kind of binged through loads of Next Generation. And it was around... So that was kind of my entry into Star Trek was watching The Next Generation round at my granddad's house because he really was into it. We didn't spend much time with him. And around that time, they brought out this Partworks, this Star Trek Partworks, which kind of came in a massive binder, kind of folder. And the thing that fascinated me about Star Trek was how far in the past or the future they were set from each other. So like when it suddenly dawned on me that The Next Generation was set years after the original Star Trek,
like 100 years after, yeah,
it just created this whole rich history kind of built up. And I think it's similar with Star Wars. When I first watched Star Wars when I was younger than Star Trek, when I realized, and I was questioning my uncle about it, and when I realized that the humans weren't from Earth, I'm like, but he's a human. Is he not from Earth? Like, no, it's not Earth. Earth doesn't exist in here, or at least it's whatever. It's kind of that mythology, that idea of that mythology, and that these things happen out of time or across so many years or across such a vastness of kind of space. That's what kind of really brought it in for me. And then I didn't move away from it. I never disliked Star Trek, and I never kind of lost track of it, but I didn't really kind of focus on it a great deal. So I would say The Next Generation, I'm going to go back and watch them after I've watched the films. I would say I've watched the bulk of Next Generation, and probably the original series as well, but not really much out of that, outside of that. But what's fun now is you kind of get that nostalgia going back to it and revisiting it and looking at it. Because again, with the films, like with so I grew up with my dad, we used to kind of rent films and watch films all the time, probably age inappropriate ones. And we watched a lot of the Star Trek ones and the
best ones.
It was Star Trek, the Voyage Home, that was always kind of one of those that was like, it just had a nice feel to it.
Wales.
Yeah. And it just felt nice. I watched that a few weeks ago and it just kind of brought back all of that nostalgia, really.
I love that one.
It was nice.
That's like the most fun to watch, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I think Nemesis was probably the last film that I watched, and the one with Thomas Hardy Picard. And it was...
Pooh.
It was an interesting one.
Not a good one.
But yeah, it's kind of one of them things. It's so nice now that you've got such this quantity of things that you can dive into, that just exists, and it's nice. How about you? How about you, Florey? How about you, mate?
Yeah, well, Star Trek's for fucking nerds and, old people and all that sort of stuff. So I never really bothered with it. I always liked, the one thing I did appreciate it as a younger lad was the color coding of everything, and the fact that there's like, all right, it's structured, like with the rebellion and stuff. With the rebellion and stuff in Star Wars, it's like, what is it? They're just kind of making it up. It's just a bunch of people. How many are there? Who knows? We don't know. And you don't need to know for that particular, those stories that they're telling, right? But I really enjoyed the look of it. And fuck, it was boring though as a kid. I was just like, no, thank you. But I was just seeing shows on telly from like coming in mid-episode, So it just wasn't one of mine. Then obviously start talking to this dickhead and all he talks about is Star Trek. And it's like, oh my God, this guy was sharp about Star Trek. He's like, just watch TNG, right? I was
TNG,
like, what am I doing? Am I going
1
in?
and 2.
Am I going in? Am I watching like these films? And he's like, no, you won't get the most out of them. Just commit to this 7-season show that's got 23 episodes per season. Just watch that. I'm like, oh, okay. This is a few years ago. I think we've told this story before. But I did that, and it was fucking boring because the first few seasons are not great. It takes a while to get its footing, right? Like most shows did back in the 90s and always, right? Like that's probably something about the original Trek. Like I've watched a few of those since after TNG. And you're like, oh, this was kind of like good just from the go. Like it's good for what it is what it is from the go. Like there's a few stumbling blocks there and weird double pilots and all that sort of shit. But it doesn't take 2 seasons because it only had like 3? Yeah. Anyway, so TNG is my jam. Love that show. Ended up loving it like one of the best shows. I've rewatched like a whole bunch of it since then too, because you can just let it roll, and then the music comes on. You're like, oh yeah, another one. That's Stardate, whatever. Let's roll. So that's my crew, I would say. And then going back to the old crew, it's like obviously William Shatner's a fucking G. Like we all know, he's awesome. He's been around forever doing all sorts of stupid shit. Like he's been memed to hell because he's an odd duck. Like he is William Shatner. There is no other William Shatners, you know. No. Same with like Nimoy, I guess, as well. But yeah, I'd never really done a lot of that until a few episodes, and then these movies. I think I watched this one for the first time, probably way before I watched TNG, I reckon. Just to like, oh, what's these Star Trek movies about? And boy, was that a mistake because I would have just watched.
You need to be in with Star Trek and be like,
to
go with the movie.
I knew nothing about any Star Trek. I only knew that they had color-coded uniforms and why did they change them when it came to the next series, and that this was the movie version. So I would have got this on DVD or something and watched it and been just like, Star Trek's not for me. This is not for me. I don't know what they're trying to do.
Well,
but
yeah.
Now I've watched this within days of each, I think Monday and Wednesday. Monday I watched the normal edition, and Matt, you can go into details after this about what the fuck changes in each one. But I watched the regular, original, like theatrical thing, and then I went and signed up for goddamn Paramount Plus and watched the director's edition, which is like the final cut ultimate edition, right? Yeah. So I've watched both, and boy, were they similar.
Yeah.
but different. Like I can see what people are saying about it. You if you're going to watch it these days, even if you've seen it 1,000 times, if you've never seen it, watch this director's edition because it shits all over the original, basically.
Yeah.
I want to touch very briefly.
Go on, you go.
I was going to say, I want to touch very briefly on the outfits for a minute, because having worked,
they're not good in that movie.
Well,
they keep changing clothes all the time. I'm going to
throw something out in a minute. But having worked in a supermarket for a few years that changed their costumes, changed their uniform, I will say this: Starfleet Command have got their shit together, because if they can change everybody's costumes and everybody's outfit, and everybody be uniform and everybody be wearing the right thing, that takes talent from a HR team.
I know, but they just replicate them, don't they? They just go.
Whereas in Asda, I tell you what, when I worked in Asda, people were wearing the old uniform 3 years after they finished.
They tried that when I worked at HMV. They tried bringing in like these magenta T-shirts, and I was just like, I'll just keep wearing the black one.
I did like about the uniform in this one. The emblem on the uniform was really cool. There was a specific earlier on in the film. It kind of had more of a comic kind of feel. It was kind of like bubbly.
It's stitched on, isn't it?
But I like when they went to Wrath of Khan and they got the more sort of that red tunic uniform. Is just just reads better on screen and stuff. I think.
Okay, explain this to me though. While we're talking about the clothes, right? We get into this. Admiral Kirk is in his grey and white, which looks pretty schmick with the big fake belt buckle.
I like when he's got his arms out and he's got his not guns, but
because you got to get them out, don't you? It's William Shatner. Don't loosen the girdle.
His hairy arms, right? They're not shaved. He's got like hairy arms in that movie, which is weird because he was always. So they've got really hairless.
They've all got this gear, right? They rock up and they're in one set of outfits, which is like beige, light pink, and then he's in this thing, and then about halfway through they change. Everyone's got different colours and the style's different. And
is that when
Kirk
they get the more coats on?
No. Before this, he ends up in a white T-shirt, basically, Kirk. And Sulu changes to... I don't know why, though. They just all change.
Shatner always wanted to have different, special, unique uniforms.
But it makes it...
Like in the original series, he had the green wraparound, didn't he? Which was also a bit of a... It helped with his tummy. So as the season went on, because he would get into shape. This is what I've heard anyway. He would get into shape at the beginning of the season. They'd do some shirtless scenes, obviously. There would be the food available on set, and then they would put the wraparound on. He'd have the green wraparound on.
I'll tell you what, they're all looking
This could be not true, though, because, I mean, I always thought he was pretty trim, to be honest.
Yeah, for 10 years past, we all look like absolute schlubs compared to these guys. Like, holy moly!
Shatner's like a proper movie star in those movies. It's nuts how good he is.
If I
Obviously,
looked as
that
good
yeah,
as
he
Shatner at
chunks
that
up
age.
towards part 4 and 5, but like in this, they're all looking tight because you'd have to. Those outfits are not giving you anything.
No,
Like,
because they're
it's
proper
crazy. They're
onesies in
skinny.
that one.
Have you seen the naked guy? I was watching this. This is before I was like hopped up on freaking cold medicine and stuff like that the other day. And Spock does he does the nerve pinch on that man that's just like at the computer when he wants to go out in the space suit, right? It just looks like a naked man the way they've shot that. It's just a man in a light brown outfit that's skin tight, and he walks up behind him like this. I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
It's very mid to late 70s, like that time where it went super beige before the chintz of the 80s came in, and it's got that mid to late 70s.
Yeah,
just down weird, like sort of browny orange furniture and stuff.
Well, you're working in a
so who cares?
You're working in a warm environment. It's the 70s. You whip your top off. It's
anyway. I want to say that I agree with people when they say it's like a slow, boring movie because you watch the movies when you're a kid, or when I was a kid, and like Wrath of Khan's so much more exciting. Number 3's got Christopher Lloyd just eating scenery. Yeah. Number 4's got the whales, etc. And number 1 is quite boring and slow when you're watching it on a TV. But when I went to see it in the cinema last year for the first time, this new version. And honestly, it's like night and day when you see it in a cinema. And like Kate goes, I don't think she's never been a huge fan of that one. She just went like, that was something. And it's sort of so experiential and the sound was nuts. It was just like, we know when they're going into Vija and all that stuff. Very good.
So the version
was they put a bunch of echo on it, right?
It's just the new Atmos soundtrack is just insane. It's just so good in the cinema. Like there's the bit with the probe where it's like and going around the bridge. That was just like having it was just like THX.
I think if they were given more time and if made probably almost any other era, like before a Star Wars, maybe 5 years removed from a Star Wars instead of 2, I think it would have done a lot better. And it's interesting, like, because I was reading too, it's the first movie ever based on a TV show, right?
It's nuts. It's never been done before because everyone was just like, no.
TV's TV, movies. So it's a massive deal. It did a lot of things, and the effects
it was going to be
good.
It was going to be TV show. So it was Phase 2, Star Trek Phase 2, and it was a TV script, and they had other scripts written. And then, obviously, I'm guessing Star Wars came out, and then they went, we need a movie, so they reconfigured it into a movie, or that was happening at the same time. I don't know. But then, like, those scripts turned into the Star Trek Next Generation. Which is like why Riker and Troy in the Next Generation are so similar to Decker and Alia.
Especially at the start.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's
they
like
sort of evolved.
She's meant to be a bit empathic and stuff in the motion picture. They don't make much of it, but she's like an alien.
Well, that's the thing too. Like watching the two versions so close together, the things that they did add and the things that they chopped out. It's probably they should be studying these two versions because I think that it fixes the film almost completely. There's very few things. Like if I were to make my version, the only thing I would do is stop this. I would chop out the 17th flyby of the Enterprise at the start. It's still too it's still too long. It looks great, but it is still too long.
I was doing a little bit of listening, and somebody who I can't remember who it was now. They were talking about it on one of the podcasts I listened to, and they went to see it when it came out in 1979. And that was just the most amazing thing ever because up to that point, all they had was the TV show, low resolution, probably black and white on an old TV. And it was like, that's the Enterprise. And they'd never seen it. So they actually wanted more of that because no one had ever seen the Enterprise in that light before. Now, obviously, we've all seen the Enterprise shinier and better than that. But at the time, it knocked their socks off because the Star Trek fans had never seen the Enterprise look like that.
It's just
so I get it in terms of the film
long.
being slow, but for a Star Trek fan at the time, they were like, "That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen."
But make it 12 minutes long instead of 19 minutes long. Like
film's got an overture. How about that? It's got an overture.
I did see that.
starts with a couple of minutes of music, and I love it. And
Skip
it did it in the
this.
cinema. I went to see it in the cinema, and I was just like, "Oh, it's setting the mood." I love it because Robert Wise, the director, old school director, editor, he edited Citizen Kane.
Yeah. He also
He was like
directed
a
West
proper
Side
legend.
Story and Sound of Music.
Yeah. And The Haunting, which is one of the best horror movies ever. The guy was awesome. And this has got lots of stuff in it that's kind of Citizen Kane-y, I think. Like lots of the deep focus shots where it's got the person right up close and then stuff behind. And there's always a bit of a blur in between. But you've got the... And I love stuff like that. It's more cinematic.
It's just really well made and put together. Like the scenes that they do add. That's what I was going to say when you said that. Like, what's her name? What's the bald chick's name? I should know. I've watched it twice. Aaliyah, yeah. So because watching it the first time through, I was like, oh god, I can't. Is she a really poor actor? Like, what have they done to her head? It's taking me out of it. Like, what is this? Why is she this way? And then all they do in the director's edition is add a scene where she kind of uses her magical powers to heal Chekhov's arm. Like after he gets like, he's like and he burns his arm or whatever. Yeah, she comes up and fixes him up, and it like calms the thing down, and it's like, oh, okay, so she's got this way about her. But then there's none of that in the original. Like she's just weird and has a weird accent. You don't know anything about her planet. Like especially if you're not a Star Trek guy.
Well, it's so weird, like because she turns up and says, "Don't worry, my record.
Yeah, I don't want to slam you.
Is on file or whatever," and it's like. Because she's just too hot. Apparently, it's so random.
Well, no, I took that as
Kirk
like that she knows
clearly.
Well, yeah, Kirk's got a like rep, you know, because he just smashes everyone that comes on board.
I'm celibate. Get lost, you.
Yeah, cheeky boy. Yeah, but there's that one, and then there's I was real pissed at Spock originally too, because I'm like, stop being such a twerp, mate. I know you've gone through this thing to like try and lose that last bit of emotion, but these are the boys. Like, this is the crew, you know. And I get it, but in the original, there's nothing to sort of say like why he starts to slowly come out of it or whatever, or not as much. And then, but there's a scene in the director's edition which 100% should have been in the goddamn movie.
Oh, is it the tear?
Yeah, because he like explains that he's realized that because this machine has no feeling and no human qualities, he feels its pain because he's doing all these like he's like doing this gear all the time and feeling it, the mind meld with the giant spaceship thing.
Mind with it.
But that's what like makes him realize that he shouldn't be letting go of that emotion, and he kind of snaps back to it. And I thought that was really good. It was maybe one of the best scenes in the whole thing to have kicked that off.
Something that people forget with the Vulcans is it's not that they don't have emotions; it's that they control their emotions. Because otherwise, they would be wild. Because they had like a period of time in their history where they just were like going around crazy, just a bit like humans. And then they learned to control their emotions. But it's not that they don't have them; it's just that they're very controlled with it, and that's the key difference. And that's all the great thing about Spock is that he always does show his feeling, but it's just very subtle. And then Bones is the best thing in the movie. Bones is always the best, but the way he turns up with his disco outfit and the beard and medallion. He's just like, fuck this,
chest out the lot.
Damn it, I need you, Bones.
So
I need you bad. That was great. When he just like puts the hand out.
Yeah, really good.
You mentioned it. Touched on it already, but what was I guess what's one of your favorite scenes from the film? I've got one. I'll tell you in a sec, but I'm interested to kind of hear what your two's favorite scenes from the film are.
I like two different ones. I like the whole journey into Vija with Spock and all those visuals because they're trippy as anything, and you can tell it's the Douglas Trumbull who did 2001. It's just wicked. Wild special effects, and they just went weird with it when it shows like the home planet and the big space lips, and that's why I put them on my posters of them. But then, yeah, I think I just like seeing those three together. It's not really any one scene; it's just whenever they have those interactions. There's that bit where they're like in his lounge or whatever, and they're talking. That's pretty good. And it's the three of them together, that just make Star Trek work for me. Well,
Yeah.
old Star Trek. Obviously.
Well, I think that that's like when you explained that to me at some point a long time ago, that it's like, well, you know, he's Kirk, he's the head honch, he's got all the ideas, but he is missing the qualities that those two have. So it's about the three of them.
Well, they're essentially like his conscience on his shoulders, and that's like the whole thing. And then so you've got emotion.
Yeah.
Just good. Just good.
And that's why one of my favorite scenes in the series as a whole, because I've also watched all of the films now as well. But I think I said this to Matt. There's probably the worst one. When are they camping at the start? What's that one?
Star Trek V, the Final Frontier. Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever. I don't even remember what that film's about. But that shit where they're mountain climbing and like roasting marshmallows and just talking absolute shit to each other. That's the best stuff in all of it. I love that bit. All that stuff's great. This one, yeah, I think it's probably the Spock. Because, James, did you watch the director's cut or did you watch the normal one?
I'm not sure. I watched the whatever version is on Paramount Plus.
Well, there's both, I think. Oh, no, our Paramount Plus might not have the director's cut. I bet you didn't watch the director's cut. It's not that it's just got extra scenes. The whole thing has been re-edited and retimed, and the pacing is different, definitely. And it flows better. And, like, the whole Spock tier scene where he, like, weeps for Vija is just, it ties the whole film together. And
I think I'm going to have to dig that out and watch that, because I was just thinking then that I couldn't remember.
But that's an interesting exercise to talk about anyway.
Like. Way better. They finished a lot of the effects.
Well, I was going to say, on the version that I watched on Paramount, the effects were pretty good, like especially for when the film was made, because it was, you know, when you kind of putting them side by side with Star Wars, I would have said that the effects in this version that I watched were far better than anything in the original.
The way the Enterprise model looks in that movie is insane. It's so good, and like it wasn't shot blue screen.
Yeah.
So you know, like they do like blue screen ILM effects, which is Star Wars. They do the blue screen.
Yeah.
It's all the little panels and stuff that are on it that are reflective and make it look really good. They can't do them really on blue screen. So like in Wrath of Khan, they spray painted it. So it doesn't look as good in Wrath of Khan, apart from the reused shots from this one, because all that dry dock sequence is pretty much like just filmed on a giant set. The model is like 15 foot long. It's nuts.
Oh, really?
And that's kind of like one of the key things. That Enterprise it's never looked better than in that first.
Yeah.
What was your favourite scene then, James? You said you had one.
Yeah. I mean, it adds very little to the film, but it was the transporter scene at the beginning, where when
the science officer gets melted.
Yeah, and one of the best lines in the film was where the dude at the other end says, "What we got back didn't live long, fortunately." That was just pure nightmare fuel, and I was like, because it kind of taps into some of that stuff as a kid when you're watching it with the transporters, and you're thinking, what happens when this shit goes wrong? This is what happens.
Well, it happens in the Next Generation where Riker gets cloned. There's one where and they didn't realise, but a copy of him was left on this planet, marooned for like 8 years, and then they find him, and he's like gone crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to dig that out. I just thought that was kind of that was just a fun little horrific scene. That was more like, again, going back into the 2001 parallels. It kind of drew on the more nightmarish kind of not dystopia, because it's not. Star Trek isn't a dystopia, but it kind of drew on the more nightmarish stuff, I guess. The not horror elements, but the stuff that can kind of go wrong.
You know what I really did
the whole movie, right, is a bit like 2001 Space Baby. So they get the new life form is born at the end, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of like the gist of it, and it's that sort of old school sci-fi storyline of like what is life, what is consciousness.
It's very cerebral, very existential.
It transcends like space and time, blah 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 blah. And it's kind of like, because he says, doesn't he, like what Vija needs to touch the creator, which is a human, so that it can have like a leap. Because like he says, like other dimensions, etc., and that's something that the machine can't do because it can't think.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
tell you
AI
what,
shit,
like-
isn't it? I mean, it's like relevant now because the AI
Yeah.
art, the stuff can't think for shit and it looks like crap because it doesn't have the ability to leap creatively, and then it melds with Decker, and then it can, and it just disappears.
The idea that because the first time I watched it, one of the main things I did really like about it is that you're going on this massive journey. They're trying to find this thing, shit we've never seen before, and just that tie back to like the history of space travel with the Voyager 6. It's gone so far out and it comes so far back, and it's just this little probe that we sent out all this time ago, and what can happen out there, we don't really know how it happened. But they're talking shit about like robot planets and wormholes and all this sort of stuff, which is cool. But I thought that was really cool, like, because that's an actual surprise when you don't know that and you watch the movie for the first time. You're like, what the fuck? I never expected that. That's just a cool thing.
Yeah,
It's a cool reveal.
I remember when I was little and watching it and just being like, oh,
It's a cool reveal. I like that.
And them talking about NASA,
Well, they did
like, that's cool.
You know, it's basically a remake of one of the original series one. There's Nomad 6 in the original series, and it's this floating probe that comes on the Enterprise, and it's all powerful because it was rebuilt by aliens or whatever, and it looking for its creator, which is Roy Kirk, and it thinks Kirk is its creator. And so it's a bit different, but it's the same basic storyline, and it listens to. That's the one where it wipes Uhura's mind, and she gets wiped, and she's just like nothing. And then they like teach her to read again, and they're like getting her to read the red ball in a book, and they're like, she'll be back to work in a week. And they're laughing at her. She's had her mind wiped. Mental.
Don't worry, you'll be back soon. I did find it interesting as well, but you might have already answered this earlier on, Matt, because I didn't realise it was the first ever TV series that was made into a film. That they called it Star Trek: The Motion Picture rather than Star Trek: The Movie, which kind of lent more into that cerebral, highbrow.
It's definitely
gravitas.
More aiming for a gravitas, and it's cinematic. It's super wide screen.
Yeah,
it's considered, and it's more about sort of sci-fi ideas than something like Star Wars. Because Star Wars isn't science fiction. Star Wars is fantasy. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, it's like once upon a time. That's why they exist for me on the same plane of enjoyment, because they're so different. There's that classic rivalry between Star Trek fans and Star Wars fans. It's bullshit. It's just because they've both got Star in the title.
That's what I said. I said that the other day. I was like,
for different reasons.
They would never be compared if they didn't have similar names, because they're nothing alike, really.
No.
Oh, they're just.
Well, that was a lot of the marketing. I was reading
enjoyable things.
I was reading a bit about how they were marketing this, and they were deliberately kind of going around saying that there is no. I think one of the taglines was "there is no comparison" or something, because they were trying to get across that this isn't a Star Wars ripoff. It isn't riding on the coattails of Star Wars, although that's how it got greenlit. But from a creative side of it, they were trying to deliberately separate those. I did read a fun fact though. Around this.
Facts. Let's have a fact.
So, the film was the basis for the first ever McDonald's Happy Meal tie-in.
Yes, I knew that.
So it had never been done before.
What did you get?
They I don't know. It just it was like just a themed box. I don't think there was anything inside of it. It was
like
just
stickers
like
and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they did 50 million of these Star Trek Happy Meals that went out to all 4,500 McDonald's outlets at the time. I thought that was quite a nice little.
There's 4,500 just in my main drag in my high street.
Yeah. So this film kind of had a lot of firsts, didn't it? If it was like the first to do that, it was the first to have kind of be an adaptation from a TV series.
Yeah.
What are you digging out?
I've got the special edition, and it's got cool stuff in it. Like
Strepsils advert.
That's probably where they got it from, though, because this would have been first.
Reckon?
Yeah,
the actual model. It's the same one.
There was something else fun that I read about this as well. And this, I've just literally read all of this on IMDb. Oh, they're cool.
Yeah, I was going to say,
stickers.
you're just going down the IMDb page now.
Yeah, that's all I did. I did it the
Give
other
us some
night.
Some of it might
goofers.
be made up bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
you get that sometimes. You go, that's not true. Someone's just
That's
written that on
not
IMDb.
True. Was around the seatbelt thing that a fan had complained on the original series how they were always thrown about on the bridge. It's like, why don't you just put seatbelts on the seats, mate?
They did it. They did it in Star Trek 10 Nemesis. At the end, he's got like these CG seatbelts that come out on the.
Oh, but in this, they've got the
New
little.
chair.
They've got the little
lock
buckle.
They've got
thing.
they've got
Yeah,
those, the
which is pretty
bucklers,
cool.
but honestly, the way they come out of Star Trek. Yeah, whatever.
Big Dan. Well,
It's when people don't understand Star Trek and they're making a movie that's a Star Trek movie. So that the director of Star Trek 10 didn't like Star Trek or know Star Trek, and you can feel it. And although I really do like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, I feel like that's the same. That's him trying to do Star Wars with Star Trek, and it's fine because they're good movies, but they've not got the thoughtful science fiction allegory. There's no allegory there, and I like a bit of allegory in my Star Trek.
I would say though, like I watched Dungeons and Dragons the other day.
Oh yeah,
and which is good. Chris Pine.
When his face melts, that is the funniest. When it's the fake version of
Oh
it.
yeah, when he's
At the door,
and he's like,
and he's
I don't know what
It's
you're
a
talking
fun
about. I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it? Oh, it's like a sci-fi channel TV show done as a movie with good budget and Hugh Grant saving the whole thing. Hugh Grant's great.
Hugh Grant's the
Hugh
best.
Grant's Chris Pine.
That's why I describe it.
Chris Pine, I mean,
movie.
I do like him. I think he's just got the charisma, and I think he was a good choice for Kirk. At least my
Perfect. He's perfect.
interpretation.
He doesn't do an impression of Shatner,
No,
but he still is like Captain Kirk. It's like a fine line, that isn't it? Because it's very easy to be like and talk like Shatner does. But when you actually watch the movies and the TV show, he's actually a better actor than that, and quite subtle a lot of the time. It's just obviously when it goes big, he goes big, like Screaming Khan or whatever.
Well, that's JJ's thing, right? He's very good at starting things and casting well.
Yeah.
He's rubbish at continuing things and finishing things. But we won't go into that. That's a story for another day.
it's a story for another day. So
All
if you're
right.
listening, JJ, take it
I've got?
as constructive advice. Constructive
This is
criticism.
my show and tell, isn't it now? So look, I've got it signed by Shatner himself.
Oh,
really?
Soundtrack. Yeah, Richard O got it for me.
Oh,
So
that's
shout out
amazing.
to Richard O for being a good dude.
Shout out.
Yeah, he is a good dude. Good old Richard.
Oh my
O.
God, I'm so tired.
Well, we're nearly done, right?
Yeah, we can wrap it up pretty soon.
We never talked about doing Bob Peak posters or anything. You said earlier
Oh
on
yeah,
that we were talking.
we are. Very briefly. So yeah, we're working with Thomas Peake, and we've kind of got some other resources from. There was a chap that helped you out with motion picture, Matt. Can't remember.
The producer on the director's edition, David Fine, helped me out because he's got access to archives and stuff that are not necessarily with the studio for whatever reason, because the studio assets have kind of been lost. So I'm having to rebuild the posters from scratch, basically.
Well, that takes me on to
the original files never hold up anyway.
Well, that takes me on to another question. What's quite funny, because we've had quite a lot of traction where a lot of the Star Trek sites are posting about your poster, which is very nice of them, and it's great to see that. And the majority of the comments are really, really positive, which is fun. Apart from one dude who seems to think that A2 is massive, which was quite fun.
Maybe he lives in like a caravan.
Maybe.
I don't know where he lives.
His exact words
The
were,
Wobbedads.
I want a statement piece. I don't want a feature wall. I'm like, how big are your walls, mate? Anyway, by the by. But somebody
most
was
people
mentioning.
probably want them one sheet size, don't they?
Well, that was the
27 by
other.
40.
Directly underneath his comment was like, if it's not 27 by 41, I'm not bothered. I'm like,
Oh yeah, because it used to be 27 by 41 as well, because they changed it in like 1982 or something like that to 27 by 40.
So it just goes to show this is the stuff we're dealing with. You can't please everybody, because if you've got one dude saying this and then directly under him the other one, so we do our best. But
these aren't reproductions. That's the key thing. People might think it's a reproduction. It's not trying to be a fake reproduction of the original run sheet. a fine art poster, the litho
Yeah.
on nice paper, and it's trying to be like the sort of like it's like the director's edition.
That's what I was going to say.
Of
Yeah.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture as a poster. It's like just trying to do the most idealized, refined, clean up the art, use modern techniques that they didn't have back then to make sure all the type is set really super sharp. If you look at old one sheets, they tend to be a bit fuzzy, which is nice, but we can go all in and make it HDR basically.
Yeah.
It's the best the posters will have looked, basically.
Yes.
What was he saying?
There was a guy saying, why are you using remastered? Surely it should be restored. And me and you had this conversation in depth, didn't we? And we went with remastered because we're not restoring an old poster. We're not taking an old poster and changing it. It's remastered because it's built from multiple elements. It's built from multiple sources.
Kind of like a new version.
Yeah. So restored.
Restoration.
Well, we kind of decided that using the word restored gives the implication that we've taken one thing and just done that, where remastered is we've taken loads of different elements and put them together to...
Well, I think maybe some people just think remastered only applies to movies. You can only remaster a movie or a soundtrack.
Yeah. Some people just like to...
probably think only games get remasters. Yeah. Every 10 years we get a new version of The Last of Us remastered.
But then also some people just like to fucking moan.
Yeah, I don't care.
No.
Moan away. That's fine. So
just not have it. How about that? Just don't buy it.
Shout into the darkness.
We're trying to you try to do something nice for people, and they're not happy, and they throw it back in your face, and it's like, how about don't buy it then and go away, because we're trying to do something nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want best possible version of the posters, not just for me, but to be saved so that they're there basically forever, because the studio has lost a lot of these assets now over years, because it happens especially when they went from everything being in filing cabinets to being digital, it doesn't all get digitized or it doesn't get scanned in, etc., and then somebody just chucks it in a bin and it's gone.
Right.
And this is a lot of old posters I've found this has happened to, so it's preserving it for posterity. How about that? How
about them apples? So,
they're very important to the history of posters too. That's the thing about the Star Trek posters.
Bob Peake kind of was one of those.
Absolutely smashed it. They're better than most of the films.
He made movie posters, Bob Peake. I think he was one of, because he was doing it before Drew Struzan. Really, he kind of really set, for my money, like the level. And then a lot of other illustrators came up to that. You do
so
John Alvin
too,
and you Drew Struzans.
They're just so iconic. Like, look at the influence that you cannot make a Star Trek poster now without those light beam elements somewhere on it. Like most of theatrical posters for all of the films across have some bit of that in it, just because he absolutely nailed it.
I rip it off all the time. I ripped it off on my WandaVision poster. Ripped it off on the Thor Love and Thunder poster.
Homage, maybe.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Instead of ripping off.
Homage.
Inspired
more
by
legal woes.
And it's also the composition. I love the composition of that poster. It's just such good composition. Because my one that isn't the same, but it has elements that are similar. It's a similar composition. You've got that focal point in the middle, but then it's also straight up and down, and it's just really. And then the Enterprise creates those lines that lead you down to the type. Probably the best movie poster ever made.
Yeah.
And come at me, everybody, with your things by Drew Struzan and this and that and your whatever. This is better.
Should we stop
Spider-Man Homecoming? Yeah.
No,
Have we got anything else
Star
to
Trek
chit
waffling?
Well, I was going to say around. We last week we told people that they could tell folks that they could write in, ask us questions,
Did somebody
share
write in?
comments. Nobody has written in. Nobody's sent anything.
Oh,
Nothing.
oh, you were going to say we've had lovely comments. No,
My post
5
bag
people
is
watched it, and they go, "I'm not watching that again."
We did have some really nice comments though from a few people that kind of were glad that we were back, and that were Mark from over at Mark and Me podcast sent me a really nice text message, which was very lovely of him.
Nice.
Mark's kind of got a great podcast and has just started another one that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But
Perfect.
yeah, we had
That's
some
exactly
really nice.
perfect for this show.
Yeah, we had some really nice comments, so that was good. So, but don't forget to write into openchannel@vice-press.com, and we will endeavour to read those out.
I could do an open ask on Twitter and be like, you get punched if you don't ask questions.
Yeah,
because that'll make
That'll
them do it,
go
won't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Is
well,
there
yeah.
also the standard YouTube and podcast shilling of please do subscribe, please do like it. That kind of helps with visibility in the algorithm, Al Gore's rhythm. It all helps with that. So you could do it if you want to. Don't feel obliged, but you can do.
I don't subscribe myself on my YouTube account to my own podcast.
Leave comments and all of that, gubbins. We're not going to hammer that. We'll probably mention it every now and again, but we're not going to hammer it all the time.
Just
It's
remind
nice
me,
to do
James, to subscribe, because I'm pretty sure I don't subscribe.
You still won't do it.
Yeah, subscribe to your own channel. Leave a review. If we all leave a review for our own channel.
I can do that. Maybe I can ask myself a question. Let's do that.
But this podcast is too long and waffles on too much.
Needs more Matt Ferguson opinions.
Matt Ferguson.
I don't think we can have any more. I didn't say anything this whole time. Just sitting here dying.
I thought you were quite eloquent about Star Trek. The fact that you're in a subdued state probably helped. Because Star Trek is relatively subdued, you know. Although there's that one episode where Worf just straight up murders Thingy-Bobby that kills his wife.
Yeah, he always gets going, old Worf.
And you're just not expecting that in Star Trek at all. And then, like, at the end of the episode, the Klingons are like, well, we're happy with that because, you know, he had it coming. Duras had it coming. And then Picard's like,
oh, Duras, yeah.
This will be on your official record, Worf, and that's it.
That's it. Get us on there. Get us on the Gowron, right? Get him coming in.
But it's because the Klingons are like, matter closed. He killed his wife. Yeah. In our traditions, that's fine. Dead.
The official record shows that he is a stone cold killer.
Worf is the best.
Yeah.
When he comes back in the Picard Series 3, it's the best thing ever.
Do we have
this
any...
just a Star Trek podcast, yeah?
Well, I think going forward, I mean, it depends how many Star Trek prints you put out at Vice Press, doesn't it? Like, it could actually be that.
All of them, Star Trek posters and prints.
But what we'll have to do though is like this is our low energy end of the 70s like laid back podcast, right? Because I've just come in with that kind of energy, I think. But then we got for Khan, when someone does a Khan post, we got to get a bit more pep in our step. We got to be quick and snappy and
got
furious all the time.
And arms out.
Scrappy.
Yeah.
Not as good in the cinema though. That's because I went to see Khan with James at the cinema, and although it's still an amazing movie, it isn't as good in the cinema as the motion picture is.
I really enjoyed it.
I mean, it depends what you want, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy the difference. But you can watch Wrath of Khan at home and get the most out of it because it's just awesome. So
there's a couple of things for us to mention without shilling too much. Between last time we recorded and this one, we announced that we're doing a screening of Batman 89. We're doing two screenings of Batman 89. We're doing one in Leeds on the 8th of November. We're doing one in Harrogate on the 10th of November. Therefore, Thought Bubble. We'll be at Thought Bubble again. Florey's coming over to Thought Bubble. Raid 71 has produced the poster for this one. So the poster there'll be a screening exclusive poster that'll be available to buy at both the Leeds and the Harrogate screening. That won't be available online at all. We're not putting that online at all. You can only get that at the screening.
Okay.
And then with us and Bottleneck, there will be an online version as well. So if you jump onto our website or jump onto Everyman's website, you'll be able to pick up tickets for that. Last time I checked, I think it was about 50% sold for both of them, something like that. Which is
a bit of a rocky start with the sales, didn't we?
Yeah, there was an issue with how Everyman do their sales, which is understandable because they have sofas and individual seats. They don't open up the sofas for single buyers until all the single seats are gone. Of course, if you go to the cinema, you want to sit in middle. So anyway, that's kind of all sorted now. You can sit wherever. They're all open up, I think.
Apart from next to me, can't sit next to me.
No, can't sit next to Matt.
I'm only flying 24 hours to come and sit next to you and watch Batman, and now he's telling me I can't.
Yeah. So the three of us will be there. We'll be at both screenings. Raid will be at the Harrogate one as well. And then we've got a few other screenings coming up. We'll also be at Celluloid Screens, or I will be, because Matt's on holiday, so I'm working that weekend. We're doing a gallery show with Celluloid Screens Festival in Sheffield. So we'll have loads of stuff from the Vice Press archives on display at Celluloid Screens throughout the whole month, and then we'll be there for their
spooky stuff,
little mini convention,
horror movie,
horror stuff,
horror stuff,
like American Wealth in London.
We found the only one that's done a good one of
that because that's going to that's on sale next week.
Yeah, Florey's got a poster on sale next week.
Oh, look at
I need you to
send you the file. Yeah. That's how well planned.
Do something with it because
I'll try
Any
and do it after
recommendations before we wrap up? Anyone want to
we didn't do the bit where we're like, hey, what have we been watching? But that's because we've all been watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Well, we've been watching Star Trek, yeah.
What else have I watched?
My recommendation is Lower Decks. That's been on in season 3 of that. And that, if you like Star Trek, once you get past about 4 or 5 episodes of the first season, it settles down a bit, and it is the best. I'm going to say it's the best Star Trek since Next Generation season 4. I love it.
Big cool.
Ooh, that's bold.
Really good. Boimler is the best character. He's such a good
Jack Quaid? Is that Jack Quaid?
Yeah, it's Huey from The Boys. And he's just such a good character.
He's
and
good.
Then Mariner, like the main as well. She's really good.
He is good.
He seems to have swung out of nowhere with The Boys, and he was in that Scream 5.
He's like a Star Trek nerd in Star Trek. So that's kind of they're losers. They're the Lower Decks, so they just do the worst jobs. But he's just like a proper Star Trek nerd in terms of in the universe. He just loves all the history and the Federation, and he's a proper goody two shoes. But he's also like an idiot.
Because I think he's a bit of a nerd in real life too. Like he's an interesting chap, I find, because obviously Meg Ryan, Jack Quaid, 2 absolute smoke shows, smashed and had him, but you wouldn't pick it, but no. It's not like he's a goddamn gargoyle or anything, but like he's a handsome boy, and he is a good actor, and he's doing really well, and he's just fucking everywhere. He was in Scream, he was good in that as well. Not the most recent one, the one before.
We watched Logan Lucky, which I'd never seen.
That's
a good movie.
Yeah.
Channing Tatum movie, and he's in that.
Is he?
That's a really good movie.
That must have been early.
They're the 2 brothers that are like idiots, and he's the long-haired one. The two brothers of Daniel Craig's character. Anyway, that was a very
good film
movie.
Yeah, I remember enjoying that a lot.
How
about you, Florey? What's your
recommendation?
Nothing.
No, so Dungeons and Dragons. I was nicely surprised. I was ill with a colds and flu on Sunday, so I was laid on the bed. So I watched Super Mario Brothers, the best one, the John Leguizamo one, and I watched Blade, and then I watched which is really holds up. It's really good. But I watched Dungeons and Dragons, and I was nicely surprised. Matt mentioned earlier it's like a high budget sci-fi thing. It just everyone in that film was a bit of a charisma bomb. And it kind of really elevated it up beyond what it kind of...
That cameo of a very famous actor, which is very unexpected and very funny as well.
It was very good.
To be honest.
I enjoyed that.
Very good cameo.
I've been reading a comic called Blue and Green, which is illustrated by friend of Vice Press, John J. Pearson. That was very good. It's kind of like a modern day gothic kind of horror set in the blue scene and stuff. That's that's probably one of the best comics that I've read in a while. Actually, that's really good. I enjoyed that. So they're my recommendations. Comic and a film.
I'm gonna sign off and say that The Creator is out next week, and everybody needs to get tickets to go see The Creator.
Yeah.
Florey,
you got any recommendations?
As somebody said to me, like on Twitter, they goes, have you seen it? And I can't say anything, but I did give the tweet back of the gif of Roy Batty. You know, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. The Creator is good.
So on The Creator, actually, that's a good point. Like, are we gonna all go and see that and do an episode on The Creator?
Yeah.
I think we should do that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so much we can talk about it because of all the influences that have gone in, but also obviously just the fact that it's Gareth Edwards' first movie since Rogue One, and it's awesome.
Cool. So
yeah, I'm really excited to see it. I'd be stoked to go and have an excuse to actually go. You know what I mean? Like, I miss a lot of stuff these days because you're just like, I should be working or something.
The week after next, because I think it's out next Thursday or Friday. So
yeah. Plus, we can expense it because it's for this. It's for work.
Yeah, I won't remember
I'm going with Kate. I'm going with Kate. Yeah.
She can expense it too, right? Yeah. All right. And with that, then, should we wrap? Should we be done?
Should we wrap? Let's wrap.
Should we wrap? Yo,
yeah.
do not
Thanks
do
again.
that.
Nice talk about Star Trek. I'm going to watch some Star Trek now.
Did you get a few things out of your system there, Matthew? Getting us to talk about your film.
It's just geared me up for more.
He's revved up. All right. Well, I think there'll be lots of Star Trek things from Vice Prince in the future, it sounds like. I'm slurring my words. I'm about to fall down. With that, I think we're off. Ta-ta.
Bye.
Beeps.